boils and ghouls. Turn out the lights and keep the popcorn coming, because it's time for another episode of Fright Fights Podcast. Fright Fights Podcast. Get ready for your gore gang. Tyler Cavan, Chris Lax, and Mike McKinney tackling horror news, reviews, and fight for their survival. Coming to you from the Fright Fights Fear Lodge. Get ready to sink your fangs into a battle that will make your blood run cold. This is Fright Fights. Fright Fights.
It's a new year. It's a new us. Welcome to Fright Fights Podcast.
I like it. A little Boston. Yeah, I like it.
How are you guys enjoying the new year so far?
It's been a long year. It's been a long year.
We haven't done a podcast since last year.
I know, it's been so long.
Did you guys get anything horror related for Christmas?
My son did. He got a little Michael Myers figure for it, the horror tunes or whatever, like they're kind of cartoonish.
Yeah,
yeah.
My wife got me one of the Evil Dead ashes, the Tiny Toons or Terror Toons
that's
things.
cool. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, and also got a Friday the 13th t-shirt and a Critter sticker. Thank you, Tyler.
Hey, yes. Merry Christmas.
Hey.
Happy New Year. Chris, why are you bringing it up? I gave that to you last year. No, listen, it's already, okay, so we're only on January 5th right now, and 2023 has already proven to look like it's going to be a huge year for horror. So we get the Evil Dead Rise trailer, if you guys have watched it. We have Megan coming out, which has been opening up to rave reviews, which was definitely unexpected. We have the new, have you guys seen the new trailer that came out just today as of we're recording this? With, it's like a Dracula almost, but it has, have you seen it?
Fucking Nicolas Cage. It's Renfield.
Yeah, it's Renfield. Yeah. And that looks so fun. It's like a Dracula meets John Wick with Nick Cage as well. It's great. I can't wait to see that one.
When you have Nicolas Cage doing his Nicolas Cage-esque voice, and he's like, "I'm Dracula," like it's the funniest thing. Like I can't wait to watch this movie because it's gonna be so awful.
I think it's gonna be good. I'm excited. Which I think whenever somebody has like Nick Cage in the movie and they know like how to use Nick Cage for all his like Nick Caginess, it's perfect. I love it so much. Like there's some like movies he's like trying to play a completely different character and it doesn't really work with Nick Cage. But whatever, he's just so over the top, like with Mandy, let's say. He just does such a fantastic. If he has the right director attached, he does a really good job.
It's gonna be an interesting year.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about the Evil Dead Rise trailer? Because this one kind of looks a little different.
I mean, I'm for it. Like, I'm looking forward to it.
I have some problems with it. I do.
What are your problems? Like, what doesn't Christopher like about it?
All right, so first of all, the smiling lady in the poster and in the trailer, it's too much like Smile. It looks like they're trying to make Smile just in the world of Evil Dead. Second of all, it doesn't even feel like an Evil Dead film. It still feels like those new age modern horror films. Like it doesn't. Nothing in that trailer rained Evil Dead to me at all.
I kind of got that as well. But you see, I don't know. I always compared it to, I think it's closest to the Evil Dead remake with that vibe. Even though it doesn't feel like the Evil Dead remake, it still has that kind of like aesthetic, I guess you would say. But overall, I think that this is definitely a completely new direction. And if you think about it, almost every single like horror film that's came out in the past 2 or 3 years has all been changing direction. So it's like all the legacy characters are finally just disappearing one by one, which is kind of sad, but then also like it was bound to happen eventually, and this is the time for Evil Dead. I mean, obviously with what was it? Ash vs. Evil Dead was the last one, and that was like
Yeah.
the TV series, and that was kind of, I guess, his send off. I thought it was gonna come back pretty strong because if you remember in the remake, there was like the post credit scene where he's like groovy, and then I'm like, okay, come on, and then they have Ash vs. Evil Dead, so I'm like, well, maybe Bruce Campbell's gonna be heavily involved. So to know that, he gave him his praise though, he was okay with it. It seemed like so. I'm excited to see it. I think it looks kind of fun. But again, yeah, I do agree, Chris. It's not very Evil Deadish.
Yeah, there's some really cool scenes in it though that did like make me cringe. There's a scene with something going toward an eye. I'm not sure what it, like a claw or something. I don't know what it was, but it's something sharp going toward an eye. That was kind of cringeworthy. But then there's that scene in it as well where they looks like it cuts the arm or something like that. Like you get like the I can't describe what it. I don't know if it's an arm or a leg or something like that, but it looked really really painful,
Mhm.
and I really cringed on that one. So I mean the effects look okay, but I mean it looks like they've taken everything that can be an Evil Dead film and just taken that away and just made a regular film about somebody being possessed by, except for the book. The only thing in connection to it is that book.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was wondering too. I was like, what about this? Are they able to say it's the Evil Dead? So, what necessarily would classify as an Evil Dead movie? And I guess they're thinking, well, the Necronomicon's involved, so that makes it Evil Dead. They can do whatever you want as long as you have that. Kind of like with the Amityville sequels, it's just like as long as it has the word Amityville in it, we can do pretty much whatever we want.
Are we gonna get to the status of like Evil Dead Thanksgiving, Evil Dead Christmas?
That'd be hilarious. You better watch out this year. So, what have you guys all watched over the holiday season?
I ended up watching The Menu. Have you guys heard about that?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was really excited because I was wanting to see that one in theaters, and it just came out on HBO Max. So
Yes.
I'm excited to actually sit down and watch it finally, and I just did that yesterday. So we both could talk about this one at least.
Yeah, man. I really enjoyed it. It was different, more kind of a psychological thriller. In my opinion, but I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. We can talk about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that it definitely was more funny. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily really walk the line of it walks very thin line between horror and like dark comedy, and it definitely was more of a dark comedy to me, I thought, than horror.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that
most
Ralph
definitely.
Fiennes did great. I think Anna Taylor-Joy did great. Nicholas Hoult playing the character Tyler, he did great. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like how each section of the movie also kind of so for anybody who hasn't seen the menu, we won't spoil too much, but definitely go check it out first on HBO Max. But they actually section all this out as like dishes. So instead of like chapters or like acts or whatever, it's actually separated one by one through like what dish they're on. And I think that's a really nice kind of touch because it is called the menu after all. I thought Ralph Fiennes was incredibly like scary. Like like the chef, the main
Oh
guy.
yeah.
I thought he
Yeah.
did a really, really good performance.
Yeah. I agree, man. I thought he was the movie in my opinion. Like his character, his role, like you paid attention to him because he was like I think he was the main focus point. Um, but it was just like you said, it was a very dark, like kind of dark comedy, psychological thriller, maybe not really horror, but I guess I was always waiting for something like horror related to happen, like something dramatic, and it just never did. But overall, it was a different twist. I really enjoyed it. I really,
I
really
mean,
enjoyed
yeah,
the movie.
so to me, like it was like the last 20, 25 minutes, it went super horror. Like the first, let's say
Yeah,
like hour, 10 minutes, that first two acts necessarily was just dark comedy. And I think it definitely was meant to
yep,
be a dark comedy. It was always written that way, you could tell. So for anybody listening, this is basically the menu is about this like couple you think at the time has been invited to attend this like super prestigious restaurant. And as they have to like access it by boat, it's hard to get there. It's super, super, super like difficult to get in as well. You have to get like a personal invite from the chef. They travel on boat, they get to this remote island that's somewhere off the shore to where they can't access the mainland without a boat. And they get this grand tour when they get there. They're greeted and they like show them like, hey, this is where we raise our chicken. This is where we, slaughter our pigs. We age this meat for approximately like 152 days and all this stuff. And then finally they get to the restaurant entrance. And as they get seated down, you kind of learn a little bit more about their story. And then it just starts completely harmless. And then little by little through each dish, it starts uncovering more about the characters. And eventually, I would say, they're at the end of the second act is when you notice it finally gets dark. And I hate to spoil it because I want Chris to really watch this and think he would like it. But I do want to say that there's a scene where it really changes tones. It is the scene where the chef calls around his sous chef, and they've like, yes, right. So they've decorated, they've like put this like mat down, and he's like, "This is my sous chef," but I forgot the guy's name, and he was like, "You'll never be as good as me,
You'll
will
never,
you?"
yeah, you're good, but you're not. You'll never be me. Yeah,
exactly. And he's like, "Yes, chef," and he's like, "And your food could never compare to mine, right?" And he says, "Yes, chef," because truthfully, you went to culinary school and tried to duplicate what I'm doing here, and you'll never ever be able to do that, will you? And he was like, "No, chef." He said, "So what are you going to do?" And then he just like pulls out a gun and shoots himself in the face.
oh,
And
dude,
it's great. At that moment, everybody starts freaking out. So all of like the patrons is like standing up, like or trying to leave or whatever. And then they realize they're not going to get out whenever they pull this one guy aside and like staple him down. It's brutal too because like they like hold his hand down and they're like left or
yeah,
right. And he's like not saying anything. They're just like, I'm gonna ask one more time, left or right. And there he doesn't say anything. She said, okay, left it is. And then takes this like butcher knife out and just chops his hand off, his fingers. And he's like
So,
screaming and crying. It's crazy.
what did you think the connection with the Margaret character and the older guy Richard? Was Margaret?
Okay.
Do you think she was like a prostitute or like kind of I don't know. I guess just I don't know, like a date or something. What did they cheat? Like it never really gave that story.
So yeah, Margaret, which is played by Anna Taylor-Joy character, she is a prostitute. You don't know that though. So essentially, well, here's the thing: she is a prostitute, but she's also, I feel like, pretty much does anything for like a side hustle, like money wise. So you
Yeah,
don't really know, but you think that they're dating at the beginning. So there's two characters. One's named Tyler, that's played by Nicholas Hoult. One is Margaret, which is played by Anna Taylor-Joy, and that's how the film starts: is them two talking together. And you kind of like know from the get-go that they're not really together, but they are. And you're like, wait, are they dating or are they friends or like they just meet each other? What's going on? And it's not
right.
until later on that you finally realize that they don't really know each other too well. And then eventually it's kind of revealed that she had slept with this like older man that was in the restaurant as well. She had been like, I'm guessing like prostituting the streets. But essentially what had
Yeah,
happened was Tyler hired her to come to the restaurant with him because his date bailed last minute. Like he got like he was broken up with or something. And essentially he just needed to have another person come with him because they did not accept reservations for one. If you remember in the film, he's like they only accept reservations for two. So
yes,
he
yes.
had to hire her or he wouldn't be able to come.
I remember that. Yeah, yep. It was really just a God. A lot. I mean, it's one of those movies. It's I won't forget. It was definitely unique. Definitely a unique show.
Oh yeah, it's probably the most original film this year, and it might be the most original film in the past couple of years. The last
Yeah,
10 minutes, if anybody's watched Midsummer, the last 10 minutes is almost exactly how Midsummer would end. and it's pretty brutal. It's pretty crazy. You know it's coming, but it's still shocking. Like they let you know, like, hey, this is coming. Like the entire movie alludes to it, and you
Yep.
think there for a while they're gonna get out of it, and then when it actually does happen, you're like, wow. You know, it kind of feels like
Yeah.
wow, it's in your face. So definitely would recommend it. So I'm gonna give my rating. I would easily give it an 8 out of 10. I liked it that much. It did have its fair share of a couple small issues. Pacing was beautiful, directing was beautiful, great cast, great story. So it's a solid film.
Oh yeah. I could back that. I mean, that's a really strong number. I would probably say 8 as well, just for the simple fact I think it was beautifully shot. Like I think the whole movie was shot very well. I think, like you said, the acting was phenomenal on all levels, from even the from all the chefs, even the co-workers, the waiters and waitresses. I thought everybody played a creepy vibe when it came to the island people. The main chef was just hands down 2 thumbs up. I mean, as his role, and then Margaret, like I really liked her character, Margaret. She was like just didn't give a shit about anything. She was like, this is how I'm going to roll. This food sucks. I hate it, and I just liked her character. She was very like she had a backbone basically. So yeah, all around, 8 out of 10 is a solid rating.
Well, before we move on to, I wanted to mention because I just remembered. So Margaret with the cheeseburger, the scene was
Yeah.
absolutely that was the biggest like fuck you hilarious scene I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my god. Yeah. So what
She's
did
like,
you
I
take
think
out
your
of
food
that?
sucks. So okay, I think you could take a couple different things out of it. So the main thing that I got was she learned that obviously the chef has a Michelin 5-star restaurant in the middle of this remote island, and where he's at now is in such a great place. But she learns that he used to just flip burgers for a living. That was it. Like he used to work at a diner. And I think that she took that and he's put so much, you can tell like he put so much into his life. And the reason these people at the island were being killed at like this particular day was, for one, it was kind of like they were all rich, they were all kind of like snobbish, they all kind of had this like agenda against him. They kind of like was like hurting him and stuff. But at the same time, he wanted to create that experience. Like if you remember, he was so for creating a memorable, like beautiful food
Hmm.
experience for them. And they were part of the last dish. And that's what made it so like intense and beautiful. So
Yeah.
there was that, right? But at the same time, where he came from, that kind of low end background, I think that she kind of like said, "Hey, look, your food sucks. You're cold. You don't have any kind of personality into it. It's not made with any kind of love, integrity. The dishes are horrible. We hate it. I'm starving to death." And because like, it bothers him throughout the entire movie that she's not eating his food. And
Yeah.
I think that whenever she was like, he was like, "What can I make for you?" And she was like, "I want a cheeseburger." And then like he like makes that cheeseburger, and she's like, "How much will that run me?" And he's like, "9.95." And she's like, "Does
Yep.
that come with fries?" And it's just like the exact meal like you would get in a diner. So I think that he kind of felt that like love for cooking again, because that was the first thing he actually cooked himself without having like people help him or chefs. So he was able to embody his start, and he was able to like make her happy, make something that she actually did want to eat. So what happened? He let her go. And that's just because he felt like so satisfied in that moment.
Gotcha. That's yeah. But
Do you think
that
that? I
cheeseburger
felt
looked
I,
that.
the
I just
cheeseburger
want to
looked fucking
say
phenomenal.
I'm a little let down with both of you guys.
Why?
No.
You both missed the opportunity to give your rating as an order number 8 or a combo number 8.
I mean, that is appropriate
you
because I mean,
They would have ate
you
that shit
definitely need to
up.
watch Outlax.
they would have ate it out. Is that what it is?
Ate it up. Yeah, I'd like to give it a chance. It's on HBO Max. I plan on watching it. I just don't know when I'll get a chance to actually go through and sit down and watch it.
Well, we spoiled the whole narrative. Well, actually, we really didn't spoil it. It's so deep
Yeah.
that you will get more out of
Yes.
it.
I, I
It's good.
I will give your rating a order number 8 out of 10.
Period. What'd you get around to watching, Chris?
So I haven't really watched anything new. Um, I kind of sit back and just kind of relaxed and watched like rewatched a few things. Um, Watched the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but the main thing that I watched is a rewatch from a movie by Adam Green called Digging Up the Marrow. I don't know if either of you guys have seen it, but it's actually a really, really good found footage movie.
Oh yeah, 100%. I love that movie. I love Adam Green stuff. I remember the first one I watched was Frozen.
Yeah. So, Mike, I know you're a fan of found footage, and I think you would really, really dig this. So he plays himself. Adam Green plays himself. And if you know Adam Green from Holliston or anything, you know what kind of person he is, and he really is playing himself. And he's a filmmaker who wants to make movies. And there's this guy that sends him a letter that says that he has found an actual monster and he knows where the monsters live. So Adam Green is like, yeah, I'm gonna go and videotape this guy for a documentary because he's full of crap and just see how wild things get. And so he finds this guy, he goes and film and does the documentary, and unbeknownst to him, there are places where monsters exist, or at least you think you don't know. It's like one of those things you don't know what you're seeing or what you're hearing. And so Adam Green is stuck in this whole thing of, is this guy telling the truth? Is what's happening out here, is this real, or am I hallucinating, or am I seeing things? Like, what's going on? And it just takes a turn, like really, really creepy, about the halfway marker. And it's really, really cool, really interesting, very atmospheric as well. It really kind of puts you in like that. It kind of gives you that Blair Witch feel a little bit throughout the movie as well. And it's
Huh.
very, very cool. I think you'd like it, Mike.
It's always like
Yeah.
a movie that
And what
gets
was the what was the
overshadowed. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
yeah. Oh no no. What was the title of it again? What was the name?
Digging Up the Marrow.
Digging Up the Marrow. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
gets overshadowed because a lot of people really remember Adam Green for what is it? Oh my God,
Hatchet.
Hatchet, the Hatchet series. And this was wasn't this kind of done in between Hatchet? It was like there was like Hatchet, Hatchet 2, Hatchet 3, then Digging Up the Marrow, and then Victor Crowley. And I think people kind of just like forgets about Digging Up the Marrow even coming out because no one hardly talked about it. But everybody who has seen it has really loved it, and that I'm a big fan of it myself. I think his
Yeah.
film. There's something about Adam Green's films that's just really fun. I don't know. Everything he makes is like fun.
I agree. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, and I wish he would do more stuff. And Holliston is one of those TV shows where if you're a horror fan or if you're a filmmaker and want to make horror movies, like Holliston is the show to watch because it is exactly like fans. It puts you in the fan perspective of other fans and filmmakers and stuff, and it really,
Hmm.
really is really funny.
I love Holliston. I thought we were gonna get that season 3. We never got that season 3. I'm still mad about it.
I know, same.
All right. So, for my next film, I want to start by saying I love regional filmmakers. So, I have always any kind of like small indie kind of like filmmaker that's from a particular part of America or wherever they come from. I love the hell out of it. I just love everything. So recently, I remember Vinegar Syndrome announcing something called Blood, Guts, and Sunshine. It is a documentary about regional horror filmmakers from the state of Florida, and I was really excited to see this. So I immediately ordered it. Like it sold out pretty quick too. So I actually had a chance to sit down and watch it recently, and let me tell you, I hate saying it because it was like a Kickstarter campaign. They mentioned a couple of the greats, but overall it really kind of fell flat. And I think the main reason is it seemed like it was almost an advertisement for like super low end, really like poorly done indie horror films, but they only really covered like one or two directors. So it starts out basically by mentioning like Herschel Gordon Lewis, which is great. And I'm like, okay, I can get on board with this. And like they have like an interview with Joe Dante and stuff too. So I was like, okay, this is good. Next thing you know, like 30 minutes in, maybe it just stops everything it's doing. This is a 2.5 hour long documentary, keep in mind. And
Ooh.
they bring out, I got my list here because I don't want to like leave these guys out. Because this was basically like, it felt almost like an advertisement for them as filmmakers. So we have Stephen Biro. he is the founder of Unearthed Films. He like focuses on the American guinea pig stories and stuff. So you hear him talk a lot. Mando Allah or Alea, Clownado, Bone Hill Road. He kind of like got like a special thanks on. It looks like his credits were, and then Andrew Allen, which is known for the Uh-Oh Show, Hellfire, Brain Jacked, like films like that. And pretty much it's just these three guys about 75% of the time. And they're pretty much just like plugging their films. And we essentially just see them continually go on and on and on about these films. And after, I don't mind them being covered. I think it's great to be able to see somebody that's from Florida doing super low budget regional filmmaking. That's great. But whenever you have a story that's supposed to be about, or not a story, but a documentary rather, that's supposed to be about an entire state of horror, and you don't mention like half the films that was shot there, it kind of like ruins it for you. After you watch about an hour and a half straight about people basically advertising for their movies, it kind of like puts a bad taste in your mouth, especially I feel like to the backers, because this was, again, a crowd-funded backed film from Kickstarter, and it was picked up, I think, by like Terror Vision, which was great as well. And it was on Vinegar Syndrome, so that's even bigger. And it did sell out. So we have all these things going for it. And it just ultimately, I remember I read this, I'm part of the Facebook group, and I just remember like two or three people posting their copies saying, whoever wants this, you can literally basically just have it. Because at this point, I don't want it anymore. And I was like, why are they saying that for? Because it seems really cool to cover horror films from Florida. And whenever I watched it, I found myself like, I was checking my phone halfway through it. It just went on and on and on about like these films. So, as much as I would love to suggest it, I thought I was going to come on here just gushing about how great it was and all that. I honestly couldn't point somebody further away from it, sadly. There's so many other like regional horror filmmaker documentaries that you could watch, or even hell, watch regional horror films. They have some really good ones out from Vinegar Syndrome as well that you could be spending your time on instead. So yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a documentary about horror that was as bad as this. I didn't want to give it a I didn't even want to give it a rating. And I mean, I feel really bad for saying that because I really, like I said, I really wanted to come on here like gushing about how much I loved it. But half the films I was like, I don't have any interest watching. I'll never watch. I never have watched. I've never heard of most of them. And here I am basically spending like $40 or whatever it was on a documentary that's supposed to be covering these films.
And we will be covering all of them next episode on.
Yeah.
I honestly could. But as much as they talked about each of them and trying to sell them to me, I honestly could probably just talk about them all right now. There's not much to it. All right. So anything else for you, Mike?
Yeah, did a little cool experiment. My daughter has to do a project at school, and it's about mysterious places in West Virginia. So we're doing the Mothman, and so we went up to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and kind of visited like the town, and they actually have a Mothman museum, which is very interesting, very cool, and it's almost like the town itself has been stuck in the 60s. It just never moved out. Like it's still there. Very, very low income town. It's either you're rich or you're poor, and there's no in between. But to piggyback off of that, we ended up watching the Mothman Prophecy.
Nice.
Dude, and I've seen it before, and it's such a great, like, it's not an amazing film, but it's a good film. It really is. I like Richard Gere. Really like him in it.
It's one of those movies where it's one of those movies where I always talk about how good I thought the movie was, and I always liked it, but I never want to go back and rewatch it for some reason.
It's a little slow. Like it's a little slow, but once things start happening, you really realize like how creepy it is. And one thing I learned when I went to the museum, there was a lot of speculation where like there was a TNT building and there was like chemical acids that were like leaked into the water, the drinking system, like through Point Pleasant. So they shut it off, and then they think a bird or something like that got in there and deformed the bird. Like the bird just grew like almost like human like, and there's just so many different things, but then again, there's really no there's really nothing like proving it that it is fake or it is a bird. There's just nothing to like really go on, but a few people keep saying like they still occasionally see this human like bird that's 7 foot tall with a wingspan of like 10 foot wide, and it's really creepy. The museum's awesome. It got a lot of good stuff for her little project, but she liked the movie as well. Movie was, like I said, haven't watched it in years, but it was a good watch.
Something I'll say about the movie is the first time I ever watched it, I was attending the Mothman Festival. They have one there every year. It's the first week
Yes.
of September. And I mean, like it was great because they did a free screening of the Mothman prophecies, and I was like, how often could you sit in the oldest movie theater in Point Pleasant with a bunch of like horror fans that's attending the Mothman festival to watch the Mothman prophecies in the middle of the same like area that the Mothman was last sighted. So it was a nice
Yeah.
experience. The movie itself, I mean, doesn't really hold up to the hype that I had for it in that moment, I guess I would say, because I had never seen it before. And I was like, this is the
Right.
best time to actually watch it would be, where I was. So yeah, there's that, but I'm definitely very, very like interested in the lore behind the Mothman. I've been in the museum, and even Point Pleasant in general, it kind of has this lore around it. You have the Men in Black that, has been
Yes.
cited. They
Yes.
say that's kind of like alien almost figures that's trying to protect this, or they might be like part of the like CIA or whatever, trying to protect, not letting anybody know anything about if this creature's real. Then you have the TNT area, which is like, there's a bunch of stuff that's been happening there. The Silver Bridge disaster, where the Mothman was apparently attacked the bridge, it collapsed and killed like how many people? Like over 50.
Or 40, I think it was like 47 total deaths or something like that. Yeah.
It's
A
insane.
total yeah. And then you also have the individual people used to see, I think his name was Indrid Cold. They said they would see this individual just like walking on roads by themselves or like just by itself, and like people would pull over and like say, hey, like, do you need a ride or something? And the guy was like like look him up, like Google him real quick. Indrid Cold, it almost kind of like looked like the Joker, a really odd looking smile, um that he looked like a human but almost deformed in the face, and it really resembles the Joker. But they said he would always say like, uh in due time, or your time will come, don't be afraid, I'll be back to get you, or something along the lines like that. And it was just
Wow.
like people were always just like, what the fuck, like what does that mean? But would never see him again. They would occasionally just randomly see him, and then he would never appear again. But I researched him. I looked at, like, I saw him in the museum, and I was like, man, I gotta look this up more. He was a very kind of creepy, scary character. Just the images that did pop up researching him.
Yeah, Indrid Cold is actually attached to a lot of alien conspiracies, a lot of weird, strange events that take place, not only just in Point Pleasant or West Virginia, but kind of all around the nation. There's a TV show called Hellier where they explore a bunch of like sightings of what like troll-like creatures and aliens, and there's a lot of ties to people who have claimed to see him or have experienced things related to him. It's just a weird conspiracy theories all related to him.
Agreed.
I remember you telling me about that show, I think, Chris. Wasn't that the one you were telling me about like last year it came out? Or was it a different one?
Yeah, it's been out for a couple of years. It's had a couple seasons. It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it if you guys can check it out. It's about these guys who want to investigate a weird sighting of like a troll-like creature in Kentucky, in Hellier, Kentucky. and nobody can seem to figure out what's going on with this incident where these people claim to have seen a troll or a creature like a furry creature that attacked them at their house, and they ended up just getting up and leaving their house completely and writing letters to people to help figure out what's going on, and then just disappeared completely, and nobody could ever find them anymore.
Jeez, I love that. I love like monster kind of things. One place, I don't know if you guys go to the Low Hotel while you were there, Mike?
Oh yes, very freaking creepy.
I
Well,
took one
and
tour of the Low Motel, and it's chilling. It's very like Shining-esque, very like a roller
oh
hotel like.
god, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Now this, so 20 plus years ago, there used to be an old hospital called the Lakin Hospital. They used to be like considered haunted. It was an old, I think it was an insane asylum at one point, but they closed it. And you could get, I mean, obviously it was like, no trespassing, but everybody trespassed to do like ghost readings and things like that. Check that out. Now, obviously it's been demolished, but there's a sign there where the hospital was like, at, and you can park and kind of read the sign and kind of look out to where it used to be. And you can still feel like we got out and saw the sign and was reading it, and we took pictures of it and took pictures where the hospital used to be. But it's almost like the air, and I'm just not making this up. It's like the air is just thicker there. And it's almost like the building's gone, but the feeling of not being alone is there. Like when you got out and walked around the area where the hospital was, it almost portrays like you're somebody's watching you. It's a really creepy vibe. Still to this day,
Dude,
we did it in the middle of daylight. It was weird.
that gives me Waverly Hills Sanitarium vibes. That
Oh
place.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Oh yeah, I love as much as I think it's kind of like apparent to anybody listening that just as much as we love horror movies, we also just kind of love the horror culture and ghosts, aliens, all kinds of like creepy things like that too. There's a lot of great, films, documentary shows, all that about this too. So we probably all three could say that we have had our fair share of experience watching these shows. I
Oh yeah.
remember growing up with Ghost Adventures, so that was always my favorite.
Oh, I love Ghost
Yeah,
Adventures.
I always was a fan of Ghost Hunters. That was on the Sci-Fi Channel
Hmm.
when I was in high school.
Yeah, I love my I don't know, my favorite guy has always been like Zach Baggins. I would
Oh
say,
yeah.
yeah. They love the guy so much. Every time I see Zach Baggins, I'm always like, I'm not getting him confused with Bilbo, am I? So,
So, guys, we had a question that was sent to us from a listener of the show. His name is Bill Vagel, and he's from another podcast. He's from Land of the Creeps podcast. So, if you guys are listening and you want something else to listen to, guys, check out Land of the Creeps podcast on Spotify. Um, really cool show. They do a lot of different things. They've had over 300 and some episodes, and they are still going. They've been going on for a while. Uh, Very, very interesting show. There's about 5 people that are a host of the show, so they're all over the place when it comes to things to talk about. But he has a question that he would like for us to answer. And the question he asked is there a movie that you watched where you started off thinking the movie was going to be bad, but that ended up liking it after the movie was over?
Well, I mean, I guess I can kind of chime in on that because it would be recently, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a huge fan of the franchise, but Halloween Ends because I heard so much negative talk about it because I didn't see it on opening day, which it sucked. So I had to be really hush hush, but I did read some reviews, and everybody was like, how bad it was, how much like how they bashed it, and so obviously I was not going to see it. But when I did not have I did not my hopes were not high because I read so many reviews online, and then some of my buddies, close buddies that were very big horror fans as well, did not like it. So I was kind of scared going into this. But
I
then when
felt the
I
same
saw
way.
Halloween when I saw Halloween Ends, I was like, I don't even know if people watch the same movie because like I loved it the very first time I saw it, and then I watched it again on Peacock. I watched it two more times, so I watched it three times in like 2 days, and I was like, this is a great film. It's nothing like the others, but
Yeah, I remember whenever we were getting ready to go watch it, I was meeting Tyler there, and I was reading reviews on it, and I was every single review was just trashing how bad the movie was. And the movie starts, and you hear this weird music, like this DJ, like over top the audio, like welcome to Haddonfield, Illinois. And
yeah,
I looked over at Tyler, and I was like, what the fuck are we watching? Like, what did we get into?
We both
And
just started laughing hysterically.
yeah, we had no clue what we were going to be getting into, and ultimately, I ended up really liking the movie as you listened to the last episode. Um, but for me, I think the film that did it, there was a really, usually it's like really low budget, like horrible movies that you think is going to be so bad that they're bad. But there was a movie that I watched that was called Carousel. It's about a killer carousel unicorn that comes to life and kills people.
I
And
remember you telling me about this one.
initially, like when I first started this off, like I love movies that take like inanimate objects and puts them in being possessed or come to life. And at first, I thought it was going to be really, 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 really stupid, really bad effects and everything. And even though that the effects were cheaply done and really silly, the movie itself ended up being really funny. And I just had an overall enjoyment of watching the film. And like I said, at the beginning of it, before anything really happens, I was like, man, this is going to be just boring. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to be funny. It's just going to be dumb. And then the unicorn comes to life. It starts having these one-liners when it kills people, and ultimately, I just found myself really, really having a good time with it.
You lost her the unicorn.
yeah, right, yeah.
Okay, so obviously that I had some films this year that I knew was gonna be bad, but I actually wasn't thinking that they were going to be as good as I liked them. I thought they were much worse, so that was a surprise. But most recently, one film that I thought was going to absolutely just tear apart and hate was Suspiria, because Chris knows at least. I don't know if you know, Mike,
Yeah,
but I am like
yeah.
a huge Suspiria fanboy. Love Dario Argento. I think it's a beautifully told story. So whenever I heard they were remaking it, and I especially when I saw the trailer and I saw it was avoided any kind of color or any kind of like, the same filmmaking style, I was like, that just completely took everything that made Suspiria good and ripped it out, and they're remaking just a boring, paper thin, conceptless plot. And I went in the theater just expecting to at least not like it or even hate it possibly. And I walked out just like blown away because it not only was just as good almost. I can't say that. Never mind. I can't say it's just as good as the original Suspiria because nothing can ever touch that. But I will say it was very, very surprising to see how well it was done. And I do think that the reason it wasn't as colorful and vibrant and interesting and shot the same way as the original one kind of made it even better because it wasn't necessarily mocking or copying something that had already been done before and just copy paste onto a new story. It actually was original. It had some like really cool concepts, and it went places that the original Suspiria never even went itself. So I think that it definitely was one of those films that it completely blew people away that loved the original Suspiria because it was just so interesting and different and fun. So I think that's probably my biggest surprise I've had easily in the last decade.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Bill. Thank you again, Bill Vagel from Land of the Creeps podcast. We appreciate you writing in and asking us a question. We will open up this questions every single week, and I reach out on Facebook, social media, everything. To anybody else that wants to ask us a question to answer on air, feel free to message us, and we'll do so. But
Yeah.
again, thanks, Bill, for the question. Well, guys, it's that time once again for another battle of the horror films. This time around, we decided that for the new year, we were going to look back at the year that was 2022. And like most people, they want to choose their favorite films that they watched throughout the year. or do a complete listing of what they watched throughout the year. We, however, like to do things the hard way and the bad way. And we decided that we were going to look back and watch the 3 worst films that we could think of from 2022. So all 3 of us picked our least favorite film that we watched, made the others watch it, and now we're going to review them. So to save you all the trouble, we're just going to go ahead and tell you that all 3 films suck, and we no longer have to do a battle anymore.
Yeah.
It's the worst of the worst.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor and never watch these movies.
We watch them so you don't have to.
Yeah.
I really thought that I watched a bad movie. I was like, man, this is the low. Like it's not as awful as some of the movies I've seen, but it's a pretty bad movie. And then I watched the movies that you all chose, and I had so much fucking problems with both of them that it made me almost like the movie that I chose.
Chris Lax, your movie was absolutely the worst movie known to man. I mean, the part that did it for me.
Hey, well, hey.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was getting.
I'm sorry. I have to second Mike on this one, though.
Thank you.
We're just going to jump right in. I think Chris has the worst film out of the 3. There was nothing redeeming about it.
The part that ruined it for me was the fucking hot dogs that they picked up that were not even cold.
Okay. I mean, all right. We'll start with mine.
Tell us about the film. How about you tell us what you liked about it, Chris?
Okay, so I didn't like anything about it, but I had less problems
with this movie. That's what I liked about it. The ending.
I heard you had minimal problems. Yes.
So the movie it's okay. First of all, the writer and director of the film apparently is 15 years old. He wrote and directed the movie by himself. I think the budget was around $5,000 that he used. So that just saying that right there, that doesn't excuse anything as being bad, but it does explain a few things. So the movie itself is about a group of kids who take a trip out to I think it's Colorado, into the wilderness. There's a cabin that they stay in, and on their way there, they come across an old gas station. They decide to stop in and get some gas, and there is a old lady working the counter. And by old lady, it's an extreme push for that because it does not look anything like an old lady. But she's working the counter, and somehow there's like a legend or story about the old lady and her son. And to be honest, I don't even remember what the connection is with her and her son. But they offend the old lady. They leave. They go to their cabin, and sure enough, the killings start happening, and characters are picked off one by one. So, as Mike was saying, in that scene with the gas station, this is how bad the movie is. So these characters decide that, hey, we don't have any food to take with us on this trip where we're going to be staying there for a few days. So let's just buy some hot dogs. Oh, look, there's some hot dogs just sitting on the counter in the middle of the store with not refrigerated whatsoever. And they're like, let's just take these and eat them. And it just, I don't know, it's just disgusting. It doesn't make any sense at all. Just there's little silly, stupid things like that just make it a bad movie. But in particular, the very beginning of the movie, it starts off with the main character, who says, okay, I'm going to take my girlfriend up to this cabin, and we're going to have a weekend there, and I'm going to propose to her because we've been together for 3 years now. And then it immediately cuts to the girlfriend at her house explaining to her mom, hey, we're going to go on this trip because we're going to celebrate our 1-year anniversary together. And at that point, I was already done with the movie. I said, it does not take that much time and effort to look at the 2 clips back to back as they were shown in the film and realize that there was a continuity error already at the very beginning of the movie. So I went into it already mad, not liking the film. But you get into with the character of the grandma, like the old lady or whatever she is. It's basically a 30 or 40-year-old man wearing a mask that looks like a grandma, but doesn't even look like a grandma, actually, that's killing these people. I don't understand what they were going for. I don't know why they chose an old woman as the killer. I don't know why they had to be at that cabin for them to be killed at. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why don't you all jump in and explain some of the details about it? Because I'm kind of frustrated with the actual plot itself because it's very thin. There's nothing really to explain besides these people just going up to this cabin.
Chris,
Tyler, since you like it so much.
It didn't even do it. What you just described didn't even do it justice. I can't even describe. Okay, so the hot dog scene, I took it upon myself to find like some interesting moments about this film. So the hot dog scene was by far the funniest, and I want to point out it was 14 minutes long. The film itself is like an hour and 10 minutes, and this hot dog scene goes on for 14 minutes. So they start in the car, and it's like, oh, guys, I feel like we're forgetting something. And they're like, okay, did you pack the sleeping bag? Yeah, I think I packed the sleeping bag. Okay, well, did you pack our camping supplies? Yeah, I have all that. What about the hot dogs? And he goes, oh, shoot, I forgot the hot dogs. And he goes,
Kevin!
And they literally talk about these hot dogs low key for like 10 minutes. Then they get to the convenience store, find the Oscar Mayers, like you said, sitting on the counter, buys them for some crazy reason. And the granny that what's it? Okay, go ahead.
I did not mean to interrupt. They actually stole them. I don't think they paid for them. They fucking ran out.
That's why she's pissed.
Yeah, they stole them. I now know why Granny kills the kids. Stole her fucking hot dogs.
Chris, this would have been a much
Did I even explain what the title of the movie was? I don't think so.
We don't need it.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so the title of the movie is called Beware the Woods, and it's from obviously 2022. And yes, it does contain some thieves at the gas station.
Now, if the ending of the film would have been like her, like the granny coming to kill them, and she was like, "You forgot to pay for the hot dogs," or something like that, that would have been acceptable. I understand, but I don't understand any motivation. The film itself was a mess. It wasn't like good. It wasn't funny. The filmmaking was really trash. I just don't think I can think of anything besides the hot dog scene that was redeemable.
Man, it was so bad. It was so bad. It was so bad. And there's another part that gets me. They're at the cabin, and the dude's sitting on the front porch, and they're like, "Hey, I guess we're going to go start a fire for these hot dogs." When the guy's sitting in front of a grill, he's sitting in front of a grill, and I'm just like, the only proper thing here, why they aren't fixing it on the grill, maybe there's no propane. But that's a big problem. They stole the hot dogs, number 2. Number 3, so they're out in a field and they're just like looking around, and the girl that's about to be proposed to like looks across the field, which is only about 12 feet away, and sees the woman like staring right at her, and she's like, "Oh, I thought I saw something." No, bitch, it's because you did see something. It was 10 feet away from you. Oh my God, it is so frustrating. And then the fight scene in the beginning where like she goes into the cabin and knocks these people out. And then the one girl just wakes up the next morning like there's no blood. There's nothing. And the guy gets up and his like head's up against the wall frame, like bent. And he's like, "Oh man, my neck kind of hurts." Like, well, no shit. It's just, oh my God.
Did you all notice that the cabin that they go to, they walk in, they're like, "Oh, this is an okay looking house." There's no fucking walls. Like they're all took down to like the base of the building. Like they're renovating the entire cabin. Like
they got a deal.
Oh God, it's so bad. It's so bad.
What about the whole like 20 minutes of it? Every time they come across the granny, they're like, "You bitch, you bitch." They just keep saying that over and over, and it's basically just a cat and mouse. And at the very end of it, it's just like, "I mean, you bitch." I think that's funny too.
It's the best part of the movie was the ending
when the credits hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the killer is supposed to be an old woman, a grandma of some sort. But you can clearly tell that it's a 30 or 40-year-old person in a mask. And they never mention anything about it being somebody dressed up as a old woman. Like somebody does the killing dressed up. They lead you to believe that this is supposed to be an actual old woman. And if you go by that nature, I mean, it is the worst possible looking old woman ever in the history of horror films. Like, it is clearly 100% not an old person.
Well, you see, that's something I was going to ask you guys, because I don't understand. Because I was watching the film and I was like, so is this kind of like, like a terror train kind of thing where like it's masked, or like, oh, is the killer going to just be is it a masked killer, or is this trying to be an actual woman? Because you can clearly see it's like a person in an old woman's mask.
Yeah, and that's what I don't understand.
A masked killer?
Because when they're at the gas station, that you see her, she's the gas station owner, and she has the mask on, and she's serving customers in the mask, and people are talking to her with the mask on. So it can't be like, you would have to be like, why are you wearing the mask for? Like,
they're not shocked at all. Yeah,
it would have to be that they're wanting you to think that this is an actual, like, what the old lady is supposed to look like.
Now, see, that just makes it even all that worse. Like, that makes it because
the
least they could have done is be like, oh, it's a grainy killer in a mask, but it's not. Like, it's a mask killer. But the idea that they were trying to pass that off for an old woman,
no. Was she wearing like yellow dishwashing gloves too? Like, I forgot. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, and Granny had to get those dishes clean before she took out one of those kids.
Oh my God! It was.
They had to put her in gloves, because if you saw the actual hands of the 30 or 40-year-old woman, you wouldn't see the wrinkled hands. So they had to put gloves on them.
Hey, I gotta give Granny credit. Oh, go ahead,
We're
Tyler.
assuming. I was just gonna say we're assuming this is a 30 or 40-year-old woman, but there's really. I mean, it could easily be the director. I mean, I don't know. It's like, I mean, I just don't understand why they decided to do that, because you could definitely find. I'm sure when you're casting, or whenever you're asking your friends, or you can ask your friends' moms, grandmas, like, Betty or something, I don't understand why they had to just get an old woman's mask to make somebody look old, and then try to pass off the worst. Keep in mind, this is like the worst mask as well. It's not even a good old woman's mask. It is like a really poor quality. They could have done a lot better if they just would have said, hey, this is a mask killer. It's a mask grainy killer.
Yeah.
And then like have like this like one scene like where you have like the saggy titties or something and make it funny.
Like, if your main plot revolves around an old woman and you can't hire an old woman, change the plot, change the killer, do something that changes, like, work around what your means. Like, if you only have access to a 20-year-old kid, change the story where it involves a 20-year-old kid, where the 20-year-old kid finds the mask or pretends to be the grandma. Like, something that gives if they would have just been like one little shot of somebody picking up the grandma mask and putting it on, that's all they needed.
Yep. 100%. They could have just done a pledge night. They could have pulled a pledge night. They could have pulled a final exam even. Like, they could have just changed it from a hiking movie, because it's obviously just like going off of like serial killer tropes and slashers. So honestly, it could either be a hiking, or B, like this like weird like school. They could have easily just made it in the school.
Yeah.
They had access to that. So I don't understand what they were trying to do with it.
Yeah, so
pretty terrible.
With that being said, it's such a small, thin plot, you can't really describe much more about it. We've pretty much covered the entire film. It's only about an hour and probably not even an hour and 10 minutes long.
Not even.
It's a short film.
So with that, I give it a rating of 3 out of 10.
Ooh.
That's like Citizen Kane quality ratings there for that. That's high. That is
but
way high.
You know some of the movies that I have seen. So the lower quality of films that I see makes other movies look so much better. And with some of those films, this one is not as low as some of those movies I've seen. I've argued with this in the past. I'm going to make you watch some of these movies in the future. You will understand.
Yeah, I want to. If you've seen worse films than this, send them my way because I want to see how bad it could actually get. Because this was
way worse.
Among the top 20, I would say I've ever watched, easily. My rating, I mean, I'm gonna have to just do it. I'm gonna go 1 out of 10.
Oh my god!
It is a 1 out of 10. If I gave, what was it, the Night of Something Strange or whatever, if I gave it a 2, and I said, well, I gave it a 2 because the filmmaking quality itself kind of was like, goofy, fun or whatever. This didn't even have that. So how could I couldn't even give this a 2 because it didn't have any like redeemable factor at all. So it has to be a 1.
Yeah.
Right, Mike? It has to be a 1. Come on, Mike.
Oh no! Listen, I if I could do a 0, I would do a 0 but out of respect, because I think the movie should have been focused on the killer hot dogs, like old expired hot dogs, and I would have given it a 2. But honestly, I give it a 1. There is nothing about this movie that was even remotely. It's not even entertaining. It's so bad. It is so bad. But you said it perfectly, though, Lax. If like, say the individual died, and there's somebody that just picks up the mask, then it would really throw like a bump in the whole movie. Like, oh my god, this whole time there was somebody like a killer, killer wearing the mask.
It would be like if you watched Halloween and someone said, "Yeah, Michael Myers, that's his real face."
Yeah, absolutely. If all it needed was, I mean, a 10-second scene at the very end, somebody picking the mask up and walking away, cuts off. That I may give it a 3, just because that leaves the curiosity and the door open. Not that I would watch it, but I'm just saying it would leave it open. But man, it was a terrible film. It was a 1, and I wanted to like it because of the hot dogs, but it's a 1.
I mean, if they would have tweaked it just
all-time low.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I officially get a 5-star rating total between the three of us.
Oh god.
It was bad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But hey, I think that this is listen. Okay, get this. This is a entire podcast about the worst. So
yeah,
you may have just won this.
Well, here's the thing: is each one of these movies that we watched is bad for different reasons, and I'm not saying that my movie wasn't the worst of the films, but the ratings, like, for instance, the one that we watched with yours, Tyler, Dashcam, had an amazing atmosphere to it, but there's so much different things with it that made it so much worse that the ratings change because of what makes it worse, in my opinion.
Well, VHS is great because the segments are about 15 minutes long. What happens whenever you take something that should probably be like a 15-minute short film and try to extend it out to like a 90-minute narrative? And that's what we see with Dashcam. That's what I think. I think it's really, really I think it's what makes the entire film completely fall flat. Because what happens whenever you make a film that's like more than 15, 20 minutes? Well, you have to develop characters. You're going to have to develop, a bigger plot. It's going to have, a bunch of arcing plot points, all kinds of development and excellent filmmaking. So we look at the director of Dashcam, Rob Savage. He makes a film that apparently has been dubbed as the Sinister takeover. Obviously people said that Sinister was the scariest movie of all time, and it was according to all this back science. And then we have Host comes out in 2020, which Rob Savage, which directed Dashcam, directs, and then they say, well, Host is the scariest film of all time. And while I was about to pick The Munsters, because The Munsters was absolutely horrible as a film, I could not let Dashcam go by without having to talk about it because there's so many things about this film that really infuriated me. And I personally try to avoid really bad horror movies. So like you guys know me, like I don't like if I know the film is gonna be bad, I don't watch it. I watched Dashcam with the promise in mind that Rob Savage was in it. That was behind it. It seemed like it was a pretty cool idea. I love the VHS films. And this is a computer screen horror. So there's been a lot of those that come out lately that's been pretty okay. Think about, Unfriended. Think about The Host. Think about all that. So we're sitting here in this film, and we get introduced to probably the most unlikable protagonist I've ever seen in my entire life. Without
There's
a
no
doubt.
probably. There's no probably.
It's
This
awful.
lady is absolutely the most annoying lead person I've ever seen in any horror film ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
I'll tell you, I would have liked this movie better if she was the first kill. Like if she just got killed off and just boom, done. She was very obnoxious. Oh my god.
So, if anybody hasn't seen this, the main character is taking place of the height of the pandemic. So, this is a 2020 style film. What's happening in 2020, guys? The COVID lockdown. So, we see a lot of like, I don't even know how to put it. Like, she's like, I don't know how to say it besides like saying like she's a Trumper. Like, she's very, very apparently like super, super right wing, anti mask, all this stuff. And she's very like explicit about it. And it makes her character. I mean, it's fine if she wants to have those views in the film, but the character is so unlikable and you just like hate her because she's so annoying and like explicit and blunt that before horror even kicks in or before the story really takes off, we already hate her and we don't really care about her. So is she trying? Is she like the protagonist of the story? Because to me, it felt like she wasn't even that. It felt like they were even trying to make you like her,
Yeah.
especially
Okay.
fucking
So
Blumhouse.
before you explain the plot of the film, I have to jump into this. If you have a lead character and she is supposed to be, let's say she's supposed to be annoying, just so that way when something bad happens, you root for the thing that's bad to happen to her. That's kind of like the thing. You watch the movie to see the bad thing happen to the bad person, right? But she not only is extremely annoying, but she has a lisp. And I'm not saying that that's bad or like we
Right.
shouldn't put people with lisps in movies or whatever. But her character is so uninteresting that the only thing that you can focus on is the way that she talks and what she says. And it takes away completely from anything else. And it just makes it that much more annoying. Like if you're gonna have her, like, yeah, she can have a lisp, that's fine, no problem at all. But give her a quality of some sort that makes you care for her, that makes you want to see her on screen. I didn't even want to watch the movie because I was so aggravated with her. And usually you're supposed to be able to go through and find certain things and or hate certain things about it. But no, when you hate the movie just because of a certain characteristic of somebody who's in it, there's no reason to even have that movie made.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
now explain the plot.
Well, see, for me, the terrible story as well was another major factor because, like I said at the very beginning, if it was like a 15-minute short film, it would have been interesting. This goes on to proceed. The only way I can explain it is eventually, just fast forwarding, where the story kicks in, they get asked to transport this, you know, woman across, like to like drop her off somewhere. And essentially we find out eventually that this woman is like a 16-year-old girl, right? It's been a while since I've watched this. Might have to help me out a little bit, but she's like a 16-year-old girl. There's crazy stuff that happens. And like people like start like levitating, they start running through the woods, they get stabbed by like this like dirty needle at one point. There's just like absolute like over the top, crazy, stupid moments that does not add up whatsoever in this. And that's essentially like overall the arching plot was that. Just basically on the road taking this person and weird stuff starts happening throughout the night. That covers it, right?
Yeah, so it's a found footage movie, technically, like you were saying, a screen
It's like a computer
movie.
screen horror, right?
Yeah, and the movie is called Dashcam. And 98% of this movie takes place outside of a fucking car. They're in the woods.
Yeah.
They're in the restaurant. They're down at the apartment. They're down the street. They're running. Why the fuck is it called Dashcam if it doesn't take place the majority of the movie in the car?
Well, there's not even a dash cam in it. So like even if it was in the car, it still technically was a GoPro. So it should have been called GoPro. Just saying.
Yeah.
So how did you guys feel about would you call it the twist? Is that what you would call it? How you find out the daughter is like actually like 16 and you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, I was confused on what the hell I was watching.
I saw Blair Witch, y'all gonna die. For that scene.
God.
Yeah, it was absolutely
God. The main character just did it though. If they just calmed her down a little bit, like the movie had potential. It really did. It wasn't like it was terribly shot or anything like that. It was first person. I liked it, but man,
you're absolutely right, Mike. The movie was not shot was shot good. It had a really good quality film to it. It had really good effects with it. The camera work, the atmosphere was really, really good. Like it put you in moments that otherwise without these people would have been a really creepy moment. But it really is the character and the dialogue that makes it so awful to sit through. I'm going to recreate one of the scenes for you, Mike. Character is running away from something horrible that just happened. I mean, something like someone just died. They're getting chased by someone that's probably going to kill them as well. And the lady goes, as she's running from them, holding the camera, she goes, "Oh, suck my balls. Oh." It's like, why are you screaming this shit while you're almost dying? Like, it's the most aggravating, annoying things that just, I don't even want to, like, think about her anymore.
Yeah. Oh, God. There's a lot wrong with her. A lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it had a lot of potential. A lot of potential.
And I would agree with that. I think the story itself is what really ruined this one because it did have a very solid. I mean, honestly, if the character, like, I think the main girl that's so annoying, she's typically a decent actress in film. So if that's how they wrote the character, maybe they wanted her to be that way. I can maybe slightly forgive that, but it's still to the point where it was so infuriating that the story was bogged down by her at the end. It was beautifully shot. I think that it was fun. I think that having like an all-night audience watch this as it's going down and kind of like, going in and out. It was kind of fun because I know that at one moment, like whenever the feed got cut out, anytime the feed got cut out, you knew something was going to happen. And it was kind of fun because like the people I was watching it with were like almost playing a game to see what was going to happen. We almost knew when something was going to happen next because the feed would cut out, like of the people watching. And we're like, that means something's going to go down. And then it was kind of funny because, it would just come back on. And yeah. So that was a fun part of it. It was nicely done.
One of the things that that infuriated me watching this movie was I sat through this entire thing just waiting for that lead actress to get off screen. I just wanted her gone as much as I possibly could get her gone. And the movie abruptly actually ends. And the title hits Dashcam and the credits start to roll. And I'm like, finally, yes, away from her. We're done. She's out of the picture. And then it cuts back to her again. And she's sitting in her car, like probably before the movie actually takes place. And instead of just going through normal credits, she fucking raps the credits to you. She sings them in a rap style in her annoying fucking voice. Sorry, she sings the credits to you in a song, so you're stuck. Like if you're a person that sits through the credits, you're stuck with her even longer than you want to be.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that though, because I thought that was the funniest part. Like, I think she was so annoying the entire movie, but I thought that was so stupid. It wasn't like I was like I liked it or something. I thought it was like just so stupid that she was rapping the credits. I was like laughing at that moment because after that, it's all over. It's just you might as well just join in. Just join in.
I do want to say something though. Like I looked this girl up on IMDb and Wikipedia and stuff to see what she had done. And for a job, like this girl actually does this. Like she is a musician and she sings stuff like this. She sings songs exactly the same that she does in this movie. And that's her actual voice. That's how she talks. Which I don't have any problem with her whatsoever. And outside of this film, I think she might do a pretty decent job. It's just the writing mixed with her, mixed with the way the movie's made, is what really irritates the hell out of me with this.
I mean, she definitely is the most hated character that I've ever seen in a horror movie, probably. So, touche to that. I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your rating?
My rating for it probably it's so weird because I don't want to go as low as a 3, but I don't want to go as high as a 4. So I want to be the weird one here. I'm going to say 3.5 because it's right in the middle for me.
I would rate it if it wasn't for the main, or if it wasn't for the girl, I would have probably given it a 5. But I think she really ruined the whole movie. So I personally gave it a 3 just because of her. It was a huge letdown, a lot of potential, and a 5 rating for a horror movie is really actually decently well. And it had, like I said, it had potential. It wasn't going to be anything super memorable or great, but it could have been an average horror flick. But she completely ruined it, so I gave it a 3.
I agree, Mike. I think the movie had lots of potential. I think the camera work was very well done. The atmosphere was very well done. The effects, like there was some really strange effects, and there was some scenes where like characters were floating. Like there's a scene where the old woman is floating from the tree down to the ground. And it being a found footage movie, I'm not real sure how they did the effects. Like it worked that
Yeah.
well. Like it made you think, how did they do certain things? Like the shotgun blasts, that they're running from these people getting shot by a shotgun, and like stuff's hitting trees and hitting the ground beside of them. And that would be like very well orchestrated to have to like run certain spots where they have stuff triggered, and it was very well done. And like you said, Mike, that the main lady is the what ruins the film. And I hate to
Yeah.
say it, but it's true. She is the reason the movie is a bad movie.
Yep.
I gave it a 3 out of 10.
I mean, I think that's fair.
Can we just talk about how Dread Central wrote an article about how this might be the scariest movie ever?
Oh my god.
We watched this movie before that article was written. And I remember we're gearing up to do this podcast. I saw that article and I sent it to you guys. I like, what the hell were they thinking? Like every year they start making this list of like what movies are the scariest movies based off of general audience members, I think. And I think the first year was like Sinister. I don't remember what the second year was. This is the third year for it. And then they chose Dashcam as this film. And I don't know what they were watching. Like this is obviously not anywhere near a scary movie. Like there's some moments in it that could be kind of creepy, but to generally be frightened by this movie, I don't know how that would affect somebody.
I think what it is the guy who directed this directed Host, Mark Savage, and it was dubbed the scariest movie ever last year. That was their pick last year, and this is his like second movie that came out that's been like gaining traction. So I feel like they want to like give him the title again, but they like didn't want to like not mention Dashcam for some reason. I don't know why. But I personally didn't get many spooky vibes from it. Like it had some moments that were genuinely like, I think I jumped maybe once, but it's definitely not the scariest movie of all time. I'm still a Sinister person.
This was a Blumhouse film, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It sure was. Jason Blum.
Wow. That's crazy to think because like production quality is good for that. But yeah, that's I think that's probably why they decided to make this or that list of the scariest film is because how high up in quality that Jason Blum is right now. Blumhouse Productions is one of the most popular horror production companies out there, so I think they were wanting to gain traction on that by listing a movie that was kind of not well known.
I mean, very well could be. I'm not for sure. I think is Sinister Blumhouse as well. I think it is, right?
Yeah,
So this would have been the second Blumhouse movie on the list. So it kind of makes you wonder because I don't think Host was Blumhouse, but this one was. So two
yeah.
out of
So
three
that gives
Blumhouse.
you, I think that gives you a 9.5 out of 10. So right now, yours is the second worst film. But to switch things up, we went from a movie that was batshit crazy throughout it, like a lot of weird things happened in high pace frequency, going into what Mike chose, which was a complete 180 with one of the slowest horror films that we've watched in a very long time. So, Mike, will you?
Tell us about this beautiful film you watch, Mike. We can't wait to hear this exciting, beautiful, excellent executed film.
Yeah, it sucked. No, okay. So I chose the movie They Them, and I was excited because it was, I think, early 2022. I was like, man, Kevin Bacon, can't go wrong with him. Phenomenal actor. I mean, he's footloose, like, hey, I gotta give him a shot. But basically, it's about a group of teenagers that go to a camp, and I'm assuming it's like a conversion camp. It's an LGBTQ conversion camp, and it's like all more of a psychological, stalkish, mysterious slasher film. It's a mass killer, but you really get none of that. It's a very boring movie, but I'll highlight some of the things that I did like about it, to kind of go off guard, or change the pace. Then I'll go back into what I didn't like about it. I did like how the murderer reveals herself to be Molly. I thought that was a good choice. Well, yeah, I mean, but I thought that was a good twist in the movie. That's why, even though it was a bad movie, it had a good twist to it. So, like, Molly takes place as the main camp nurse, and but
I like how Mike describes his movies. Mike's like, "Hey, I watched this movie. Here's the twist."
No, yeah, well, I wanted. That's the only thing about this movie, though, that was a highlight, was the twist. Because, like, I expected so much out of this. Like, I thought, was it going to be like a Friday the 13th, or was it going to be like a sleepaway camp, or it like a mixture between those? And it was nothing. Like, it took, what was it? Two people died within the first, I think it was like 50 minutes of the movie. So there was no killings. Everybody was just trying to figure out who they wanted to be as individuals. Kevin Bacon was just a really odd character in the movie. I don't know how he saw this role, read this script, and said, "Hey, I want to be a part of this. I've got to be a part of this." Potential.
We lost Mike. His movie was so bad that his phone won't even let him record.
Exactly. Zoom was like, we hear some talk of they them, so it's time to end this now.
Kevin Bacon was like, you mentioned me, you're gone.
Exactly. Mention my name. It's like Candyman. Say his name 5 times and you're out. He's done. As we speak right now, Kevin Bacon is probably murdering him in his house. So what can we do?
Back to it. Just nothing ever really happened. I really wanted a Friday the 13th feel, like slasher film. I will say the mask of the killer was pretty cool. I thought it was like decently. It wasn't like Granny, it wasn't like a super fake looking mask. The acting wasn't great, but it wasn't as terrible as, I'm not trying to like throw Lax under the bus as the what was it, the acting in that movie,
whatever the hell it was.
But it was so boring. Like nothing happened. The characters, there was nobody super memorable. I I think I looked at the big names in the movie. Well, the big name in the movie thought it was going to be very good, but it just wasn't. It fell really short. So it was just, I mean, it was a big
Yeah,
letdown.
I kept waiting and waiting for something to
Yeah,
happen, and I thought, here's the moment, and then another 10 minutes would pass with absolutely nothing. Oh well, here
nothing.
comes another moment. Another 10 minutes pass. Nothing happens for the first 50 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
Listen,
Now,
here's anybody listening to this, here's what they're not telling you. They're not telling you that there is a very extended 6 minute scene where they're singing to Pink.
Oh God.
yeah,
And
which was
they
the
sing the
that
entire song.
and that was the most entertaining part of the film.
I know it was so stupid though. It was just like I wonder. Okay, so this is supposed to be like a queer, empowering, positive, kind of uplifting movie, but it was very
Is it?
evident that it was not. And that's what I'm saying. It's very evident that the people who wrote this, who had anything to do with it, was obviously, had nothing to do with understanding what the queer community would want. And it's as a
Yes.
LGBTQ horror film, I was like, who was the director? Okay, let's look at the director, John Logan. He's written
Like,
films like Hugo. He's an old, like 60-some-year-old man. Obviously, he has no experience in writing anything like this.
yeah, like I was so confused because that's how I was thinking. Like, okay, so this movie has to deal with the LGBTQ community, but it I can't tell if it was made to go against it or if it was to go for them. That's the whole thing. Like, if it's to go for them, I feel bad for the cast because it doesn't come across that way. It comes across as if at what they, how they choose to live their life, or whether that's, not really a choice, but just how they live their life is a bad thing, and they need to be punished for it. And I don't. I mean, that's the part that you get most of the film from. You don't really get the empowering part from it, in my
No.
No.
opinion. Like it doesn't feel like that way. It feels like they literally were like, oh, we got to make a movie to appeal these type of people. It's like, no, they're just as normal as everybody else. So why do you have to single
Exactly.
out? Like, it didn't feel like it was a pro LGBTQ film, but it's made for those people. And I don't.
I will. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You can go.
I just wanted to like speak off of that. Like, yeah, if this was a movie for the LGBTQ, like it missed. I feel, it wasn't an empowering movie for their part. I think it was a huge fail. Um, it wasn't a supportive movie. It was almost like it was going against them. Like, hey, if you are gay or if you are or anything like that, you're going to die, or you're going to be messed up. I thought it was a big fail on that, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like that part.
The only thing that I liked really about the film was the fact that every single person who was part of that group, part of the LGBTQ community that was there at that camp, accepted every single other person that was there with the same issues.
100%. And I think that ultimately, I don't know if they like were trying to sign up for this film thinking it was going to be shot positively because it just doesn't come off that way. Like, obviously, I have no problem with, okay, so we're obviously not going to be able to see the film kind of like dictate that it's going to have a perfect environment for LGBTQ plus people because the film itself is a conversion therapy camp. So I understand they can do whatever they want in terms of trying to like say like, oh, we're going to completely make these people who attend this different or whatever. But even beyond that, even to themselves, like as they like speak, it's just like it was written so. I guess I don't know how to even describe it because it was written in a way that really didn't champion anything that the community would stand for, and it's just like completely oblivious to that kind of positive movement of even of horror. It kind of like is a slap in the face to horror at this point because so many
Yeah,
films have done something like this a lot better. And I mean, ultimately, this was not one of them. And there were these like weird scenes where they like handcuffed them together and made them go to the woods, and they were like wearing these like weird cloaks and stuff. At that moment in time, you're just like, get the hell out of there Because like obviously,
yeah,
it's bizarre.
And the movie, like the story, didn't even need it to be like that either, because the entire plot of the movie is only to get these kids at a camp so that these counselors can kidnap them secretly and torture them, and it just there was no reason whatsoever for them to single out a community. I don't know. It didn't fit well for the story. There was no need for that. I get it if it's something that you want to make something pro for them, fine. But why would you go all around the attempt at doing that? Like everything that is for that, it seems like they're trying to go against and say all these people are against you. All these people are doing this. All these people are doing this, and there's no real outcome for them being in that community. Like it should have been something where because they're in that community, they work together and they team up and they figure these things out. But it didn't. They didn't do that. It was just like, oh well, somebody killed somebody, so let's just go home. You all leave, and I'll.
You're right.
Yeah,
it was just, and not to mention it was painstakingly slow. There's just nothing that happens at all. And like when we say there's nothing that happens at all, it's absolutely nothing. Like we get introduced, we're introduced to the characters, and you just see them literally exist with nothing happening around them of any kind of substance for easily the first, 2 acts. The third act, we're like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I think the third act does kind of come alive a little bit. You kind of understand where it's going a little better. And it does get a little bit more interesting. Like at that moment, you're like, okay, I can tolerate this last 20 to 30 minutes. But by that point, I was already so pissed off at the way that the first 2 acts kind of went and how boring it was and how like misguided and misdirected it was that I didn't even really, I couldn't enjoy the last 20 to 30 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ultimately, the payoff at the end sucked. Let's just be honest with that, too. It just was not, it was so predictable at that moment.
There is a twist to it. And I will say this, I didn't see the twist coming.
Yeah.
And not the killer reveal twist either. The somebody who's working with the counselors twist. And there's that young guy who is working with them. When you finally see him with the counselors and everything, or right before that, it shows him taking his shirt off, and it looks really weird. Like it looked fake. Did you all notice? Did you all see that? Like it looked like it was like a CG. Yeah, he takes his shirt off and he gets in the lake with the other guy. Like he walks into it, and it really felt like it was like a CG body with his head on it. It looked
I remember
really
that
weird.
scene. I don't remember that particular moment of it. I do remember that it did feel very I think it may have been where it was so smoky and the camera angles were so strange against that lake. It kind of made it feel a little ingenuine.
It felt weird. It was odd looking at it.
It's kind of an ugly film too. The film itself was shot kind of it just didn't look good.
Yeah.
I swear to God, one of those scenes were out of focus. I was like, man, this is literally out of focus. I mean, it was definitely not made with craft. I mean, obviously, it looks like a film that you would see in theaters. It's definitely a high budget film. Not high budget, but it's a higher budget film, and it just does not look. It just looks ugly.
Oh, and this too. Okay, so Kevin Bacon's character takes these a group of the people out to the woods or the field, and he's going to have them shoot a gun and teach them how to shoot. And he's the entire time he's I'm looking for my killer. I gotta find my killer. And then finally, somebody does what he needs him to do. They need him to shoot a dog, which is stupid anyways. Why would it wasn't needed? But whatever. So one of them goes through. They actually do it. They shoot the dog, and he's like, "Finally, I found my killer." What did that lead to? It had no repercussion for the film whatsoever.
It's one of those weird, sad attempts for the filmmakers to kind of show spiraling out of control, or this kind of crazy turn of events is happening and it's starting to get really dark and it's kind of just showing. I feel Kevin Bacon's character becoming more and more intense with what he's trying to do. However, that being said, it didn't do that whatsoever.
No,
It had a complete
no.
disconnect from the original story. And it definitely didn't stay true to itself whatsoever. It was sloppy, and it never came back around. Like it never it did not fit into the story at all. And Kevin Bacon was not even convincing as a killer. I was more convinced by everybody else besides Kevin. And so I can't say he even gave a good performance, being one of the main characters of this. Now, the students, not the counselors, did an okay job. Kevin Bacon did terrible, but the students themselves, the campers who came in, they all did okay.
Yes, they did.
Especially
They were the only interesting people in the entire film.
right. Everything was, but keep in mind also these characters were all one dimensional. Like none of them really truly. They try to tell their story, so each character kind of got about 30 seconds to a minute of screen time to where they explain what kind of family they came from, why they're there, the deals they made. But the thing is even at that, I felt like they had no true depth to them. It never went deeper. It never got more interesting. Kevin Bacon had no real motive. We hear that his dad did this. You know what I mean?
It definitely fell short, big time.
Oh yeah. So I mean, honestly, if I would have watched this film before because it was a film that I really did want to watch before the show, and I did put it off because I heard nothing but that. And if I would have picked it before, it would have definitely probably been my worst film because I can't even say I liked it as much as Dashcam, and I thought that Dashcam was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I gave this film a 3. Like it wasn't as bad as the Woods or whatever, the hot dog movie, but I'll take that back. I give it a 2 because it wasn't as good as Dashcam to me. I mean, it was. They're all bad movies. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as bad as Dashcam because Dashcam had the most potential. I feel.
Yeah, I agree. Dashcam out of all three had the most potential. Them. I think the biggest problem with it was just like Tyler said. It was just a completely misguided film. They didn't know what they wanted to do. It seems like it was made by somebody who didn't understand the topic that they were making a film for.
Right.
So that being with extremely boring, it was well made. The acting wasn't awful. The effects weren't bad. It was just story and misguided filmmaking.
What did you think of the torture scenes, Chris? Like, what did you think about the last the moment they got them and tied them up and made them watch images of female men and then go back and forth.
Very, very awkward, very uncomfortable. As soon as it starts showing flashes of man and woman, and then whichever one it lands on, if you're the woman, apparently then you get zapped for looking at another woman, which man gets zapped for looking at another man. It was just watching it take place and seeing these people torture somebody because of that was very uncomfortable. It was awful.
I agree 100% because I thought, it kind of makes it. I think they were trying to go in a direction that they were trying to say hey, this camp's been around for a very long time, and they've been doing this multiple times. And even Kevin Bacon's character threatens at one point, at least you didn't get my dad because he would have done lobotomies on you. But the thing is, like we said before, it just didn't the torture itself. It didn't really line up with anything that would have actually pointed towards this camp being this evil place and just kind of come out of nowhere with no motives whatsoever. So I just want to get your opinion on it because I was just man, it's just I didn't get that.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I was very uncomfortable sitting through the entire thing of it. The movie itself was, like I was saying, we've all said it, extremely boring. Nothing takes place for the first 40 minutes, 45 minutes of the movie. but it's bad in a different way. I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Nice. And I mean, obviously, I agree. I mean, if Pink was the killer at the end, if it was revealed and they took off the mask and Pink was there and she was singing like, perfect, and she had the knife in her hand, I would have been fine.
Game
However,
changer.
since that didn't happen, I'm going to agree with well, I think I'll agree with both your scores and really kind of. I think I'll probably go 3. I don't like it quite as much as Dashcam. I thought it was a bit more boring. So, I mean, do I want to give it a 3? Okay, I'll give it a 3. Cool.
Cool.
So that's a 9
Cool.
out of 10. You gave it did you give it a 2, Mike, or a 3?
I did a 2 because I gave.
2. Okay.
I think I gave. Yeah.
So that's 8. So you got 8 out of 10. I had a 3 or 5 out of 10, and Tyler had a 9.5 out of 10. So technically, I won. I mean,
Yeah.
we all lost.
Yeah.
We all did lose. For sure. So Chris won, Mike got second, and I was in last place because I guess I just picked the best film as the worst.
Yeah, you were the best worst film.
I try to. That's the thing. I think that my film was okay because some people really like Dashcam, and they like said, it was a fun movie, and obviously they've been publishing how scary it is. And to this day, I still read mixed reviews. Like a lot of people's like, it wasn't very good, but I was entertained. And I don't understand what they see in it, but I can, I try to avoid really bad films. I think that's why this was the worst one I watched. And it was painstaking to me, man. I don't know. So I don't know what people see in it. If you have watched Dashcam and you like it, maybe let us know why. I don't know because I did not see that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
what were saying, Chris?
For all of the people who are listening to the show, let us know. Comment on our post or make a post yourself on our Facebook page and let us know what is the worst film of 2022 that you watched. Did yours equal out to the same that ours is, being like, 3 out of 10s, or was it worse? Was they better? Let us know, and we will chat with you in those comments or on those posts about them. And also, too, guys, we're going to do something a little different this time around. I think we're going to start something a little different. So usually we would spin a wheel and we would determine if somebody got extra points or minus points to help out with that. And I don't think it is very fair to the people for the films that win to get a wheel spin and get a negative on there and then lose the game because of it, or vice versa. Where a movie that isn't very good would win the game because of the wheel spin. So what we decided to do was take that scenario out and replace it with topics. So each what we would do is spin the wheel, and there's going to be about 10 or so topics on the wheel, and whatever the wheel lands on, that's what's going to be our topic for choosing the films for the next episode. So like we'll have werewolf films, slasher films, zombie films, like all those different subgenres on the wheel, and we will spin it and we'll choose our movies based off of those topics. So all right, we got the wheel ready for spinning here to choose our next topic for the next episode. And our choices are between ghost stories, vampire flicks, found footage, house as the horror. That's Tyler's choice. He can explain that if we get that. Clown Town, films from the year you were born, dark comedy horror, werewolves, and shark attack films. Those are all options that we could land on for our next episode. So Tyler, go ahead and spin that wheel for us to see what we get. And we get, of course,
Hey!
House as the horror. So Tyler, do you want to explain this topic?
Yeah, so next time we'll be doing House as the horror, which is basically the topic explores, like how like you watch a horror movie and the house is almost like part of it. Like it takes on the shape of a character. Think the Amityville Horror or the House in Suspiria or like the Changeling, things like that. So next week or next time we record, we'll be doing something that where the house itself kind of takes shape as the horror of the film.
All right. So we want to thank everybody for listening to us again. We have a lot of stuff planned for future episodes and can't wait to get those started. Also, a big thank you to Land of the Creeps podcast and Bill Vagel for listening and giving us a chance to answer some cool questions on air. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time, guys.
We love y'all.
Bye, guys.